Is it morning still? Good morning, everyone. I see a lot of familiar faces, our Glendale PD and officers that I've worked in the past, so thank you for being here. This was a very important topic, a passion of mine. I've been an educator for 23 years, and as it was presented earlier, I am teaching at the university level, preparing future counselors and educators. Stan, our previous presenter, is a stellar advocate of suicide prevention, and we've worked in the past many years. And I know he's not here, I'll be talking to him later, but I really wanted to appreciate him sharing his personal story. All right, so let's see if this works. Oops, no. All right. So in my PowerPoint, I have a lot of data. I was not sure who my audience were. So there's some slides that I will glance through. But during my 23 years of service in K-12, I wanted to share live experiences with you. And why this work is very important and why we need more caring educators out there. So basically our objective today is to learn the concepts of suicide prevention, to understand the characteristics of students who are at high risk. Those of you mental health clinicians that are servicing and serving our youth, whether it's after school or you're servicing their families, those are important things, and I'll go over them. And to practice needed skills by studying stories, and of course, I'll share some stories. So we know that, as Dan and our doctors mentioned, we need more caring adults out there and brave people to ask straightforward questions. My passion has been always going out and educating parents. I think we as educators, we have them 7 to 3. After 3, we lose them to our parents. So we need to make sure that they have the resources, the skills, and the knowledge how to help and assist their children as well. Being a teenager is very tough. I have 2 boys, 18 most recently, and 18 and 20-year-old, and I've seen the challenges that they've had in high school setting. Kids at times can be mean, right? Therefore, it's important for us educators and parents to have those tools to support our youth. Adolescents are going through changes, whether it's their body or whatever it is, and there's a lot going on. Trying to fit in a school, for example, trying to fit into a club or a group, whether you're an athlete or not, those are all a lot of challenges that our youth go through. Also, a lot of our youth, they don't share their personal stories, right? So we need more caring educators to have a comfortable and honest relationship with them so they can share. They youth are trying to explore, where do I fit in this society, right? Whether I started middle school or high school, where am I and where do I belong? So I'll share a personal story. My 18-year-old, when he transitioned to high school, he went to private elementary school. Therefore, high school is very foreign, especially going to a public high school that we have 3,000 students. Therefore, he was trying to find where he belonged in that group. He couldn't play basketball because he was injured, but his passion was biking, and I had no idea. So this kid started joined the club, the bikers, and over the weekends, I would not see my son. He was bike for 7-8 hours. Once again, it's important for us to make sure that when we're talking to them, they have a reason to be part of something. When our kids are connected, and they know that they're cared and they belong, suicidal ideations are not rare, but I think when they're connected and you're loved, those are not ideas and thoughts that actually come to your mind. Exploring relationship with peers, family members, and others. At times, not only I oversaw mental health, but also attendance. When our youth are not attending school, there's a reason why kids are in school, right? It's important for us to make sure that we are bonding and we're asking all these important questions to make sure they're providing whatever their services and needs are to make sure that they're engaged and they're active. Intimacy, relationships in our youth are important. For us adults, We are at a level that we handle relationships differently. For our youth, for our teenagers, a breakup is, I'm done. I want to take my life because they broke up with me. So those are things when I present and I share with my students and when I do consulting, is that those are important things. Our kids need to feel that they belong and they care. Again, those are the stages, and I'm not sure if PowerPoint will be presented or shared with the audience later, but I'm not going to go through the slides. I think I want to, okay, so what is mental health? We had amazing doctors present about mental health, so I'm not going to go through that, we all know. But as far as a school setting, what does mental health? Belonging, love, caring adults around our students. And I will mention this over and again, if students are connected to one adult on campus, it doesn't have to be the school counselor, the teacher, it could be the custodian, it could be the SRO that's assigned to our school. They know that they can go to somebody when they are in need and they need assistance. Mental health challenges. There are a lot of challenges that I know the previous doctors that presented, and their data was impressive, which I've seen that doing the job at Verne Unified. The number of threat assessments and students that we placed on 5150 increased after COVID. COVID really did disservice to our students, as most of us know. They were isolated. A lot of families lost their housing, their jobs, their income. A lot of our students lost their loved members. That was another thing. Losing a lot of grandparents and parents. Coming back from COVID was very difficult. Therefore, they are going through challenges. Okay. So these are some data that I'm not going to go over, but we really, the first one I wanted to highlight, 1 in every 5 youth in the United States, in any given point, they experience a mental health disorder in their life. Now, I've dealt with students that would come to the office as I was the school psychologist and I was in charge of the threat assessment. I'm done. Okay, so what does that mean? Let's talk about it. First of all, let me start and let's get to know you, because I really don't. So let me share about your story. And so we start that bonding and the personal relationship. And when they say done, I'm done, I don't want to live. Again, as educators or our clinicians, don't be afraid to ask the right questions. What does that mean? Okay? A lot of our students that I've worked in the past, they're just frustrated about a situation that they're currently in. Whatever it may be. Things that I've noticed, for example, failing a grade, right? Or disappointing a parent because I cannot pass my AP class. I've seen that a lot. A breakup could be one, whatever. At that moment, they really don't have the skills to cope with their difficulties. And so they're like, okay, I'm done. Talking to them, providing them hope. Stan mentioned this person's story, which I thought it was amazing, right? Sometimes all they need is just a caring human being. It does not have to be your brother. It could be anybody to say, I'm here for you. Therefore, again, I won't go through this data, but I wanted to provide, so warning signs amongst youth, right? And this is K-12. Lack of motivation, of course, is huge. When we know our students were average or good students and suddenly they're lacking motivation, they're failing their classes, they're not attending classes, they're withdrawn from their friends and family. For example, if their family had a tradition on a Friday, every Friday we go to family dinner, and suddenly your youth is saying, I do not want to be included, right? They're always isolated in their room, they're closing their door, they don't want to be around their friends or peers. These are all signs, warning signs. For us educators, parents, anybody who works with that youth to make sure that they look into. Spending a lot of time on screen, which sadly a lot of our youth do that. As a parent, it's been my challenge, I have to say that. The day that you buy them their cell phone, or if you have no restriction and limitation, they will be on their phone 24/7. right? Therefore, you know, if youth want to just be on their phone isolated, again, these are signs that parents we need to look at. Sleeping habits. If you have a child who is sleeping normal 6 to 8 hours and suddenly they have difficulty sleeping, right? Those are one of the signs. Difficulty concentrating, you know, or staying and doing any kind of a task. Giving away possessions. And that's something that I've experienced at youth who are thinking of committing suicide. They want to give their possessions away so they can be remembered. Again, excessive worry or fear, having thoughts of suicide or harm, and changing in their mood. Now, mood change could be various reasons. As I said, 2 teenagers, I get it. They go through their emotions and all of it. They're having a challenging day with their friends, girlfriends, whatever. You can see that. But if it's consistent mood change, that it's not going away, those are some of the warning signs to look at. So, as I said, I've lived in Glendale for the past 30+ years. I come from an immigrant family. Come from a culture, sometimes mental health is a taboo. And we have to realistically know that it exists in multiple cultures. Therefore, a lot of our students that really seek and need the services, sometimes we have a barrier of parents consenting and allowing the students to receive that. Some of the barriers could be maybe income, that they're not able to, but thank God to COVID, a lot of money has been poured into mental health, so our students are able to get the services. As I said, cultural, family, traditions, norms. I have worked with, again, multiple families during my career. Sometimes you are working with parents that are physicians, they are themselves the mental health providers, that they are against their children getting the support and the services. Again, you know, what do we do and how do we help our youth? Some of the risk factors, you know, as I mentioned, could be biological, environmental, psychological, social, emotional, and of course, protective factors. I'm gonna jump into the protective factors because we can change lives. We can help people. Everybody matters. Every single one. And every time that I talk to a student, every time that I teach my classes that I'm currently preparing future counselors and psychologists, I tell them, if you're here for the paycheck, because we don't make a lot of money as educators, right? You're here, I'm hoping, because you care. You care. And if you don't care, your students are going to know. Do not be that fake adult that you're going to sit behind your desk and pretend that you care with the students. Also, if I'm hoping that, you know, those of us who are serving our youth, we don't have our personal stigma or biases against people or whatever, but if you do, I always tell my students, pass it on to somebody who cares and can help. These could be your kids, could be your brothers, sisters, and your family members. Treat every child as if they are very important. Another consideration that I think it's important to take in fact is not every student goes through healthy and you know, a supportive family. Therefore, us as therapists, us as counselors and educators, we become those adults in their lives. Therefore, it's important to take our role very seriously and help every single child. Coping skills. Sometimes when our students say, I'm done, again, I'll say this again, I've seen it over again. It doesn't mean that they're done, they don't want to live. It's because they don't have the coping skills. I'm going to go over some of the scenarios later on, and you'll see how you know, stories came about and how successful we're to be able to serve these students. Safety is very important, as Stan mentioned. You know, knowing that there's an adult, somebody right? That you can go to in the moment that you have your thoughts, and you are not well and you're thinking of hurting yourself or others, it doesn't matter. It is so important. Therefore, any student that I've worked with, whether they had thought of harming themselves or others, and it was very immediate, which was very high, that needed hospitalization or middle or low, I immediately, the team created a safety plan. And in the safety plan, we always had asked the question, who is an adult, or maybe 2 or 3 adults in your life that you can contact if you need? After 3, because we're not here after 3, right? We wanted to make sure that our students are safe. And when you put that paper and a pencil in front of the student and they start thinking, believe it or not, there's a lot of names that pours in. Whether it's their neighbor, or it's their SRO, or it's their custodian, and I've seen a lot of custodian names. Because, they're on campus, they know their students, just like, our educators do. Again, we talked about the warning signs. Please, if we are working with you to make sure that we're aware of all these warning signs. And I know our doctors talked about medication and sometimes the immediate side effects of the medication, because we don't know how that's going to affect our youth when they're in school. Therefore, again, I'll go back discussing about the relationship when our students come back from a 51-50 hold, and we're providing an intake with the family. It is crucial that the parents and the student are on the same table with us. That, hopefully with a relationship that we have a positive one, parents are able to share with us if the student was diagnosed, if they were in a hospital or not, or if the student was provided medication. And that's important to me, not because I want to be nosy and I want to be in your business as a parent, because I know that's very sensitive matter. Why it's important? Because medications at times take time. We know that. Medications have side effects. And so if my student is sitting in the classroom, right, we have 6 periods, 4 periods, and they're going through a transition, or they're having some kind of a difficulty with the medication, we want our teachers to notify us so we can help and serve our students. Therefore, again, everything that I've done, I think, in my career, I've done it with passion and care. And my students and my families have seen that through me. Therefore, it was easy to work with them and make sure that I'm providing the support. Let's see, we discussed about multiple, let's see, of course, increasing using drug and alcohol. I mean, unfortunately, it's accessible, sadly, to our students, but as parents, educators, we have to make sure that we are watching them closely. Now, again, having my own kids and being on their face 24/7, sometimes they hate me, but that's okay. That's my job as a parent, right? Therefore, we want to make sure that, to be there and to help them when they really need it. Another myth out there, of course, I'm not sure if Sam mentioned about it, if you talk about suicide, okay, that was a myth, and especially in the community and parents, that my child is actually going to commit suicide. That is not true. That is not true, right? Being open and asking them questions, and providing them the assistance is imperative. Again, warning sign continues, poor attendance, breakups, those are all reckless and having a lot of accidents. Mostly this happens with our little kiddos. When as a parent you notice that they're coming home and they have a lot of cuts, injuries, those are things to make sure that you watch for. And of course, students who cut, whether they're young or older. I had a student, years ago, 12 years ago, she was dropped off to high school by her mom, and she was wearing a very short skirt. So the teacher called me and said, I think there's somebody who needs help ASAP. I said, okay, walk the student to my office. When she came to my office, she was wearing short skirts and all her legs were cut. So here's the thing, I mean, at a moment, I'm thinking, wow. First question I asked, who dropped you to school, right? So if this is a parent who dropped you to school and they didn't see those visible cuts, that's another concern of mine as mandated reporters. Again, make sure that we are watching for signs. Another situation that happens is when students cut and they want to hurt and harm themselves, they wear sweaters under like 200-degree heat, right? And those are signs as parents or there is clinicians. I mean, why are you wearing the sweater? Why are you covering yourself? It's because they don't want to expose and show others. Social media, unfortunately, it has been beneficial in some areas, but sometimes it really hurts, right? Our students have learned a lot on social media, and sometimes it's content that is really not helpful to them. So as parents, and legal guardians want to make sure that, we are kind of controlling and overseeing their social media posts as well. When I was at the high school, we would get a lot of calls from parents or a lot of times from a friend's parent calling, so-and-so posted something on social media that they're gonna end their life today, right? So yeah, that's the reason why I say that it's important to make sure that we look at all the warning signs. Again, how do we intervene? So as educators, that young, beautiful girl who came to my office with short skirts with olive cuts, first question I asked is, who brought you to school, right? And I remember she had her backpack on her lap, so I couldn't see it. And I knew because the teacher told me, look at her, cups. I said, honey, you want to be comfortable? Put your backpack down. The minute she put it down, I was like right there in front of my face. I saw it. And we started having communication. And it was obvious that she was having some challenges. She had parents at home that were not supportive of receiving services, again, because of taboo and barrier issues. But we were successful in bringing the parent in and having the conversation and help and assist the student. And all the time, there's a lot of pressure on our youth to do extraordinary well, go to Ivy schools, and in some communities it is like that. As a parent, yes, we expect our youth to do well, but I want them to be happy and healthy. I think that has been my priority as a parent. But a lot of our youth, they don't know, they don't want to disappoint their parents, right? Or if they have an older brother, sister that they've accepted to Harvard, and guess what? The middle child is not going. So, and those are some of the challenges that they're experiencing. Therefore, those are important things to make sure you ask. But again, when students were referred or students that we worked with, when they came to the office, whether I was the clinician that I was serving the student or I was just a clinician that I was conducting the threat assessment, the right questions. Hi, have you thought about hurting yourself? Right? And the student would often tell me yes. And my second question would be, when was the last time? So if the student told me that, oh, it was last year, I thought about it, but you know what, no, I don't think so, but that takes me to a different category. But if the student tells me, yes, I did, and it was this morning. So my third question would be, well, what is your plan? How are you going to hurt yourself? And I think we had made a commitment, in the community that we wanted to raise awareness. That's why with Dignity Health a few years ago and Verne Youth Alliance, there was a grant opportunity to obtain a grant and educate a lot of parents about youth mental health and QPR. And for those of you who know, youth mental health is a bit lengthy, about a day, sometimes a week of training, but QPR, it takes only 2 hours. And those are basically skills questions and questionnaires that we go through and educate parents what to do when you are in need and you're alone with your child, and make sure that every child is supported. Of course, I think the most important thing is that when students are having ideations and thoughts, to make sure that the student is safe immediately. We are not going to tell the student, oh, go see your therapist tomorrow, or go see your therapist in the afternoon. It is immediate. Whether it's just a statement that the student mentioned, or if they actually have a plan that will move forward, we want to make sure our student is safe, and of course, parents are notified. In the school setting, things are different. when we conduct a threat assessment, it is imperative that the team conducts an assessment. It's not just the therapists. In a team, we include the school psychologist, school counselor, or social worker if they are assigned to a school, administrator, teacher, whoever is involved with the student. And as a group, the threat assessment is conducted, and we decide which direction we are going to go. Do we call our local police department? Do we call our the PET team? Depending on the duration of the PET team, again, and the necessity and the urgency of the student, we decide how we're going to best serve the student. And of course, any student or an adult, this has nothing to do with students, but if you are at a risk and if you have ever thought of, harming yourself or others, it's important to have a therapy, right? So how do we do that? That's another match, right? How do we work with our parents to make sure that they allow and accept their students to get the support that they need? And of course, it hasn't always, my mission in the past when I worked in the school setting, that not only I'm serving the youth immediately when they're in danger, but I always follow up with them. Again, that creates a sense of belonging, that creates the relationship, and they are going to have a caring adult on campus that is going to assist them. All right, so I'm gonna jump into the case studies. So I remember, I served in the Norway for 8 years, and in 8 years as a school counselor, I have to say, not once I've conducted a threat assessment. So then, of course, things have changed, right? And 8 years later, I moved to a different position, I come to a different district, and boy, my eyes was awakened. And again, as I said, partly it's because of the coping skills of our students, and what we are going through as a society right now, especially after COVID. This incident, I remember I was called, one of our elementary school principal contacted me and said that there's an anonymous note in our school that a student is going to come, kill everybody on campus. Lastly, it would be me, the principal, and the student. They're going to kill themselves. And I remember the scene, definitely. Of course, I had to run and go assist my principal. Thank God, thankfully, the principal and the teacher were able to identify who the student was, although there was no name attached, but with their writing. Parent was notified immediately, and happened that the parent was a clinician. He did not live in state, he was out of state, and had guns at home. And we immediately contacted local GPD. They did a home search, and of course they did find guns that they were loose at home, right? These are things that we want to make sure that we're looking after and providing the services. And of course, we called the parent in, dad was conference called, we had a safety plan for the student was on medication, the student had a therapist, so there are a lot of services provided to the student, but unfortunately, he was having some issues with his parents, and therefore, he decided that he was gonna end his life. Again, we're talking about second graders, right? So this happens, it does. And as I said, doing this for over 20 plus years, I think those are the situations that I kind of remember when they're little. I'm like, seriously, you're only first grader, but it happens. Because we really don't know what challenges they have at home, right? It could be an ill parent, it could be, I don't know, some students are much bonded and have a good relationship with their grandparents. And so a lot of barriers, losing their housing, their income. I remember, oh God, so many stories. We received a call saying that we had 2 siblings at the high school that a few months ago, the dad died by cancer, and now 2 months later, we lost them all, right? And I remember that the older sibling was a female, but the younger one, he was having some challenges of dealing and coping. What do? I lost both adults. What do we do? We're gonna be homeless. We're not gonna have a house. Therefore, I think it's important when we are dealing with students or youth or anybody in general, have that care and compassion, because we really don't know what kind of challenges they are facing. Social media, and case number 2. So, there was a day that had 4 different rooms, 4 different threat assessments for 4 different students at the same time. Do not ask me how I did it. I mentioned it was very difficult. So we're jumping from one room to another with the team to make sure our students were safe. But clearly these 2 females, they were having some kind of relationship problems. And one posted on social media that because of their breakup, she was gonna end her life. And she was gonna end the life today. Therefore, it was imperative to make sure we are providing the support, the resources, and of course, helping those kids. Both female students were hospitalized. One was placed on 5150 for about 2 days, and I remember the second one was in the hospital for about a week. Again, I don't think hospitalization and providing that 5150 is the only thing we can do. We need to care and provide aftercare. How are we going to support, provide the tools, skills that our students need after they're done? All right, I was told I have 5 minutes. So I think I'm going to share one case study that I will never ever forget the story. So it was my first year at a local high school, and I was providing therapy to one of my students. And the counselor knocked on the door and said, I need you, I need ASAP. And I said, I'm providing therapy, I can. I need you right now. Okay, sure. So guess what? I told my student, I'm really sorry, we'll meet you later. And quickly we had to jump in and had an intervention with our student. The student was told by the English teacher that they had to write an essay. And in the essay, and one of the documentations that they had to share with the teacher was a journal. The teacher took the journal and looked at it and said, clearly this journal was not created for my class. It's very old and very concerning and dark pictures. The student had pictures of people hanging themselves from a tree. And of course, that was an immediate attention for help. We quickly gathered the team, assistant principal, the counselor, myself, our SIO at that time, and we conducted a threat assessment. Of course, it was high. We asked the student if this journal was provided for this assignment, or did you? And she lied, of course. She said, no, but you could tell the journal was very old and a lot of documentation provided. Contacted the mom immediately, we asked her to come to the school. She did it. Thank God. Sometimes our parents are missing, right? We don't see them. I remember, sorry. The first thing, she yelled and screamed at me on the phone. She said that, I can't believe you're holding my daughter hostage. You're holding her against my will. But of course, I have to do what I have to do as a professional to make sure this student is safe. Then she said that you're doing this to protect your credential, whatever. I said, no, I'm not. We need to have this conversation in person. When she came in, again, there are some pictures in your life and your career that you'll never forget. We had a conversation with the mom. We showed her the journal, and instead of looking at the daughter and saying, honey, how can we help? She took the journal, didn't even look at it, didn't even see what the content was, and told the kid, really? Yeah. And so it was a constant battle speaking with this mom and making sure that she understood what care was and what she needed. We wanted to take her, place her on hold, but mom said they have a clinician. The student was on meds and a lot of different stories, right? So it was 7 days before school was over. I didn't work all this summer. I was trying to enjoy my 2 months off because this is a very stressful position, and all clinicians would understand that we need some kind of self-care. I received a call. I didn't know who the caller was, but I said, she's gone, isn't she? And I remember that because my boys were there and they're like, what do you mean? Yes, so the student did exactly what she had shared. And the reason why this is a story, because I'll never forget that beautiful smile and that face. I've made it a mission that no matter what I do or where I am, I'm going to educate parents and peers to be caring adults and really help. There's no judging for somebody who really needs help. We could have saved a life. She could have saved a life. But unfortunately, as I said, after 3, we lose our kids to our families, right? So again, stories, I have multiple stories, but I think my time is up. So I thank you for having me here, and I'm hoping that I provided some kind of assistance. You know, in my free time right now, I am part of CDE, California Department of Education. I'm a part of a mental work group that we meet monthly, and we have updates from the state superintendent about mental health and what the needs are and what the resources are and what's coming. I'm really honored to be on that team as well. But our youth need us more than ever. So for those who are mental health clinicians, anybody that's working with youth, whether you are certified or not, we thank you for what you do. I think there's a question. We'll get you a microphone. It's not working here.
Apparently you mentioned, I didn't get it, if you can emphasize again that where can we get the questions that we need to ask for the person that, from the person that think it's in stress?
Okay, great question. So the question was that how do we, where are the questions? What do we ask? The questionnaire that the doctors, professionals mentioned, and those are questionnaires that our clinicians utilize at the school systems. If you're not a professional, that you're working as a clinician, you don't need that. You need 3 questions, okay? Have you thought about hurting yourself or others? It could be yourself or others, right? So that's the first question. If your answer is yes, then your next question should be, when was that? Again, there are times that our students are stressed, overwhelmed. They have thought about harming themselves, I don't know, 2 years ago, but they're over it, but they still need help. That takes you to a different category. But the urgency is that if your student says, yesterday, this morning, I'm gonna jump the bridge when I go home today, right? That's urgent. Your third question would be, do you have a plan? Because and if they have a plan, again, that's like a 988 call, that's you're calling to your local police department, whatever you need to make sure that individual is safe. Okay? So 3 simple questions. And please do not be afraid to ask those questions. It does not increase the likelihood of somebody killing themselves or hurting themselves if they don't have one. So those are good questions to ask. Yes.
Hi, my name is Maha. I'm a clinical research coordinator at Para Research. We do conduct pediatric studies, and one of our barriers are the parents to kind of convince them or offer ourselves as a resource to enroll their children into our studies. What are some of the language that you have used in your experience with parents, bringing them into that mental health space?
Great question. I think as mental health clinicians, that's one of the barriers that we have. But I go back again, building relationships and not giving up. Those are 2 things that I've always done. I remember there was a family that they just migrated to the United States. They were residing in Glendale. Students started at the high school. She was anorexic. There was no way. I'm not a doctor, medical doctor, but anybody could see it. She was referred to our office by the administrator of the high school. She was isolated at school and a lot of warning signs. When I call the parents into my office, of course, it's denial. No, she's skinny because she doesn't like to eat and this and that. But clearly that wasn't it. And the student was going to school and telling the peers that she was going to hurt herself. It took me 2 months to work with this family. Parents were not on the same page. Mom was begging me for help, and dad was saying no. And it was typically the cultural barrier that dad's in control sometimes, right? And it was very difficult. But guess what? I didn't give up on the student. Every time that there was a threat, we called pet team. We hospitalized the kid. It's not a fun experience. They sometimes hate you as educators because they think that we caused this, but later on, they appreciate you. This specific student was hospitalized for 5 months in a hospital and she was receiving the care. So every life that you save matters. And please don't give up. It is hard. It's very difficult. In the school system, things are different at times when you're 13 and older, and we know that the student needs the therapy or they're seeking help and the parents are saying no and we can't sign consent form. With rare occasions, we approve because we want to make sure the student's safe, right? But I know that has been my biggest challenge. It's not my son, it's not my daughter, it's not my family, it's you, you're the problem, the fingers on everybody else but you. But don't give up, please.
Question online. I'd like to ask what verbiage she uses to speak with parents who stigmatize mental illness in therapy. How do you advocate effectively for children?
So I think one of my biggest successes has been that I speak the languages that are served the communities. I speak Armenian, Farsi, and Arabic. Therefore, every single family that has come before me, I was able to connect with them. Again, that does not mean that community they're going to sign a consent and say go help, but that provides that relationship bonding again. I try to avoid therapy because I think with therapy comes a stigma. We use counseling in a school setting. It's like a safe adult on campus that you can talk to. And the other thing I've always told parents, this is your consent. At any moment that you're not happy, take the consent away. We are not going to force our services, but please let's try. Sometimes our parents would come and say, we've had therapists and they suck and they didn't do anything, wasted my money and my time. And my question is that, please try another one. Just because you didn't connect and you didn't get the services and help with one, it doesn't mean that all therapists are the same. So I think our community and our parents need that educational support and the patience.
What role does Child Protective Services come in when you decide to call? If you have a parent who's not going to cooperate and you think the problem's at home, or you have a notebook that obviously there's a problem and a parent saying, I'm doing this, when do you call in Protective Services and what role do they play with you?
Amazing question, Brian. I love our social workers and I love our system and then we are all mandated reporters. Sometimes we do have a challenge with that. Because when you contact social worker of DCFS for mental health, they will not take a call. They will listen to you and say this call is not. Sometimes when we call for attendance, we know if students are not attending, there's a reason why they're not attending. They will not take the call. It takes patience. I'll repeat this again. It takes persistence. I have been very persistent. We had a family, we had this mom who adopted 2 children. They were both not only in need of mental health, but of course health. I remember the daughter had diabetes and we had a nurse. We had a whole situation set up. The student had an IEP, we had transportation. These students will not come to school. So here's my issue. When a student has medical, disability and diabetes, they need medication and they need to be in school because we're not going to go home. We will provide the service at school. You're not coming. That's a huge issue. It took me 5 visits to the house with our police department. It took me 6 calls to DCFS until they decided we're going to take these kids away from them. Again, not every case is the same. I'm not saying that, but sometimes you do get rejections. Please don't get them. But again, if we are serving and servicing students that are over 13 years old, again, if they're saying, I need help, and we know professionally that we can help, we're going to try the parents, and if they say no, we're going to move forward. But in a school system and setting, it's different. We're not diagnosing, we're not providing medication, we're only providing that safe zone with a therapist, giving them the coping skills and working with some goals to make sure they're supported. It's different in a school setting than outside.
Thank you. Deborah's going to take the last question.
Hi. Growing up, it wasn't uncommon to hear high school students or young adults joke about suicide. or they'll throw around things like, kill yourself or I'll kill myself, stuff like that on the campuses. How do you combat that sort of language and educate on the seriousness?
Great question. Because as I said, a lot of our students, they don't have that coping skills, right? Youth, they don't know. So end of a relationship, it's the end of the world. For me, I'm like, move on to the next, but they're not, they don't know. It's sad, but that's what they're at a level to say that, you know, like my life is over. I remember we had a suicide on campus 13 years ago. Unfortunately, that was my first year when I started here in Glendale. And right after that incident, it was, boy, one suicide after another. Our softball team, they were playing at La Cañada High School. We had a student at La Cañada who jumped from the building. I mean, it was constant. And when you start finding out the reasons, it is sometimes not having supportive parents, not having supportive adults in their lives, and of course, sadly, sometimes it's breakup. Right? Or again, having not accepting parents. It's very difficult. So here's my message to my students. Every single student who came to my office, whether they meant it or not, that they were done with their life, I conducted a threat assessment, and it was not fun. So guess what? If I did the threat assessment, and if we found out that it was actually legit and the student needed care, then they were transported to the hospital for the services. Sometimes that's not a fun experience for the student and the parent. So, and I will always tell them, we're here to help, but if you don't mean it, don't just say you're done, because this is the process, right? We had a student, I'm gonna say this one, I know my time is up. We had a student at the high school, 10th grade, she would drop anonymous notes too, right after class. Right after class, the bell rings, she will leave anonymous notes. Teacher would bring the notes to the counseling office to say we don't know what it is. Of course, the note says, I'm done. Okay? So again, luckily our teachers, amazing teachers, they identified the student. The student came to my office and we found out here's the issue that the student was having. Mom left her and the younger brother, eloped with a lover to Canada. These are exactly the stories, and it's true. Dad had been married literally a month later with their coach that was 20 years younger than her dad. Again, when we're serving youth, we have no idea what they're going through, right? And so this student felt abandoned, disliked. How can my mom leave me, right? How can this happen to me? Where do I go? Now I'm a stepmom. Stepmom is almost my age. Those are all the challenges that she's having. Now, she was unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, hospitalized 2 times. And she received the services and we qualified her for ED. She had emotional disturbance and she did receive services. But every time we called, Dad never showed up. It was always stepmom. That clearly tells you the picture, what the issue was. But at the same time, we've served a lot of students who said, I am done. Then they have to face, you know, the therapist and the counselor, and they realize that if really truly they don't mean it, they're not going to say that again. I think education is imperative within the community, with schools and our youth, that there's support, help. I'm done, okay. But again, thank you, and thanks for having me.